Hey everyone, this is Alex, and we have more details with the R5 and a little bit about the R6 too, the R6 also. So after the release of the marketing material and the ambassador stuff and all the good things, well, there was 2 Q&A and live sessions that people could actually ask questions about those 2 new machines. And they asked away. So from Canon Europe, there was Mike, which answered a lot of questions. And I'm going to put all the subject here of Canon Europe and Canon USA. So both guys are working from Canon, so these are official answers. So there's Mike from Europe, Canon Europe, and there is Specialist Gennaro from Canon USA, and they have answered a lot of questions. So since the Europe one was before, probably because of the time zone, well, let's check out the questions and let's check out the answers. And this is going to be a long video about a lot of text. I'm going to put a lot of text on the screen, and so yeah, you might want to use the menu or the timestamps below to skip to a question. All the major questions, I'm going to put some links. Some of the subjects in this video: dynamic range, deep learning system, 120 frames per second in HD format for the R5, 4K in RAW, why not? Low light, who's the best, the R5 or the 6, and why? Overheating, how works the EF lens adapter on those specific cameras? Cool new features that was not in any Canon lineup before. What is the buffer size or the maximum burst? How about the shutter durability? Besides the 8K, is there any differences between the R5 and R6 that we don't really know about? Is there a difference in image quality and color depth comparing the R5 to the C500 Mark II? Good question. And we will come back on overheating a second time in this video a little bit later. How about the rolling shutter performance? Does the R5 has GPS built in, like the 4D Mark IV? So let's start with Canon Europe. So this is Mike answering the questions, and here are the exact questions that have been asked. So Mike, what can you tell us about the dynamic range of the EOS R5? And I'm gonna give you the short answer and put the long answer on the screen. So Canon does not officially give numbers starting today, I guess, because I think I saw something in the other marketing material. But basically, the R5 has about 1 more step of dynamic range compared to the 5D Mark IV, more or less. And the R6, the dynamic range will be about the same thing compared to the 1DX Mark III. Second question for Mike. Can you tell us a bit more about the camera processor and why it's at the heart of the autofocus capabilities? I'm going to give you the short answer where you can do everything, but it's actually very interesting how they do that. So I'll maybe give you the long answer. The new digit processor, which we introduced for the 1DX Mark III, really elevated the amount of processing data that we could do, and the magic behind it was all done in advance with the engineering in Japan building a deep learning system. And we have so many photographers and access to the world's leading wildlife and sports, and they were able to provide images, and we have built a giant database of images that we could then teach the cameras how to recognize subjects. And he added a little bit later in the interviews that the processor itself does not learn from what you're doing, right? They all did that in advance. Probably they have supercomputers over there, and that's what the deep learning process is. For example, and I guess this is about the same thing about white balance and composition, or let's just say luminosity, on what does the camera does when it's actually in automatic mode, right? For example, in the 5D Mark II, the white balance is okay, and there's about, and don't quote me on that, but there's about, let's say, 500 pictures in the camera that compares. So when you're taking a picture in automatic mode, it's going to compare to those 1,000 pictures, and that's going to give you whatever the camera can see through the lens. For the 5D Mark IV, it's 10,000 pictures, so it's going to be way more precise. But obviously, there's not 10,000 pictures inside your camera. It's more like data points, and those data points will actually be used by the camera, and it's going to compare. So same thing for the autofocus and eye, face, animal photofocus. So it's all data points, and the camera will be able to use that to fix the object or the eye, and that's how it works. Next question: why does the R5 does not have 120 frames per second in 1080p, which is HD? Camera engineers, they really focus on the high resolution, and obviously adding the 4K 120 frame per second. But having worked with these ambassadors and a lot of feedback from the early samples, there's a lot of list of things that the engineers are now looking back at based on user feedback to see, well, if we can add onto these sort of specifications. So the camera is already launched, and it's probably in big production right now, and they are already kind of we're looking at how can we improve it. So I'm going to give you the short answer. It's not set in stone yet. There might be more firmware updates, but no guarantees. Another question about the RAW. Why is it not possible to shoot 4K in RAW? So the short answer is convert an 8K signal down to 4K. That's a lot of processing because it's using the full sensor and then converting that. So it's taking 8K, full 8K, and converting that to 4K in RAW. And so when you're taking the full 8K sensor, you have to debay it, and then you need to rebay it in 4K. So that's a lot of heat. Instead of just taking the 8K RAW and just shoot it at the card. That's it. There's no really processing anything. Next question: why doesn't the R5 has a good low light as the R6? Pixel size, simple as that. 20 megapixels versus 45. The bigger size of the pixel, the more light it can accept, a bit like a bucket, so therefore it absorbs more light, and therefore you can do lower light because there's less background noise with the processor, and the signal therefore get a cleaner signal. Next question, which is actually pretty cool: does the R6 have timecode? Yes, there's obviously features we copied across from our professional cameras, and timecode is one of those functionalities. The other one is obviously Canon log and even the zebra lines. Can you just say a few words on overheating on both R5 and R6 during video recording? Answer: obviously there is no magic solution, but when they are used for extended periods of time, they will get hot and the camera will need kind of shut down and have a little kind of cooling off period, shall we say. So obviously the R5 can do 8K for about 20 minutes. It depends on the ambient temperature, to be honest, as well. So the cooler that it starts or the hotter that it starts off, well, you'll have to calculate the time, right? Next question: can you do time lapse? Yes, there's 2 time lapse options on both products. And I'm gonna summarize what he said. You can either do the time lapse and it's gonna create a MP4 format file, which is gonna be a movie, or you can have all the pictures and you're gonna do it after that in your favorite time-lapse software. Something that we don't know about the R6, well, the R6 is slightly lighter than the R5. There you go, now you know. What about using EF lenses, right, with the adapter? What are the limitations? So I'm gonna make a summary here, but you can read it on the screen. There's a few lenses that don't have 100% compatibility, and it's mostly because they have a button on the lens which can pre-focus at some places that you have memorized. So the button will not work, and these lenses are from before 2008. And obviously with the adapter, you will have actually more focus points than if you would use it with the DSLR, but instead of 100%, you're gonna have about 80% of the screen, which is better than have only 9 or 12 or whatever. Does the IBIS works with the EF lens and the adapter? Yes. How about some cool features that I have added to that firmware? Why not? You can now record video to one card and stills to another. That can be useful. You can prioritize a card. So if you do take one card out and put it back in again, it goes back to that card, which is so useful. In the old cameras, it would stay on the old card. You can turn off the replay on the back of the viewfinder if you want. There's a lot more customizability. Rings, button, etc. You can change the speed of the joystick. That's going to be useful actually. There's a new grip, WTF10, which has a Wi-Fi booster and an Ethernet port. Could be useful, and of course you can put 2 batteries in it. On Canon website, it was actually written, accept up to 2 batteries, better Wi-Fi connectivity, transmission range up to 150 meters or 492 foot. Gigabit internet, SFTP can keep uploading pictures while camera is off, can be useful. Remote shooting with time sync and link shooting with up to 10 EOS R5. You can also remote trigger a 1DX Mark III with it. So you could be here, other cameras, let's say at 100 meters placed, and just take pictures, and they are all going to take pictures at the same time. Pretty cool. Now let's go with Canon USA, with Gennaro, which you maybe have seen before. He's the one who introduced the beta software for Canon with the USB connector that you can use for remote work and video conferencing. So what's the maximum burst during continuous shooting? I'm going to make a summary here. On the R6, because it's a 20 megapixel, right, sensor, it can go from 1,000 or more internally testing with a compatible SD card. So if you have one of the fastest, yeah, you should be okay. On the R5 with a higher resolution, obviously, in RAW mode, I believe on the CF Express we were about 180, so at 20 frames per second. You're looking at about 9-second burst. If you leave your finger for 9 seconds on that machine, you might have another problem. What is the shutter durability on these cameras? On the R6 is about 300 thousandths, almost double that on the R5 with 500 thousandths, which is about standard for those kinds of cameras. And obviously, if you don't shoot with the mechanical shutter, you might even extend the durability of that shutter, right? There's some different factors between the R5 and R6. In movie recording, on the R5, I can actually go both on the card and record while having an external recorder out the HDMI and record that at the same time. On the R6, you can cord out or record to the card. So on the R5, you'll be able to record on the card and externally by using the HDMI cable at the same time, which is pretty cool. In terms of image quality, which is both the resolution and the quality and the color depth, how would the R5 compare to the C500 Mark II? I believe the C500 Mark II is a 30 megapixel, if I remember correctly. They're going to be kind of similar, but at the same time, not quite. There's a difference in the cinema sensors. If 90% of the work you're doing is cinema capture features, commercial stuff like that, you'll really look at the cinema line. Beautiful video, they're dedicated for that, and it gives you a different level of quality. But where it does match with the R5 in the C300 series and probably the C500 series too, it's gonna get the Canon log. It's gonna help you out sync both images in a non-linear editing software later on to make them do a color match in 4K. Actually, the R5, there's 4K and 4K HQ. So 4K is just 4K, and the 4K HQ is taking the 8K information oversampling it back down to the 4K, giving you more true RGB, and that's kind of getting closer to what our cinema cameras do. About the overheating, we have to be real about this. It's not like one of your cinema cameras where you have an intake fan taking a constant cool air, taking out the heat from the processor, sensor, and everything else after a while. If there's no way of cooling it down, it will overheat. So if you're shooting an 8K RAW internally, it can record up to 20 minutes before it stops. Or more, your mileage may vary. What about the rolling shutter performance? So the answer is, that's one thing that we are testing on dramatically with the beta models, with the bodies. I have it right now. This is still a pre-production unit. What I can say right now, there is less rolling shutter. This includes the 4K on the R5 and R6 compared to the previous DSLRs. And I believe he talked about the 4D Mark IV, I'm not sure. And I'm gonna just show you a rolling shutter normal. So this is at 17 millimeter, and HD. If we go in 4K, I'll show you another video. So obviously there's the crop factor. So it's about 125 millimeter equivalent. And if I go back to HD and go at 125 millimeter and show you again what it looks like, so this is the result. So it might be better than that. And that's what I think he's talking about. Now, do remember, I was kind of pretty aggressive first. Second of all, if you use a larger, so let's say 24 millimeters, that's going to be a little bit less distinctive. And also I saw the videos of Vistec. I'm going to put a link in the description below, and you can see his videos and it's not really visible, but then again, he wasn't doing something aggressive like I was doing. What's the weather seal on the R5 and R6? When it comes down to the bodies of the R5 and R6, you're looking at the same time weather sealing. That is like the 5D Mark IV, so incredibly well weather sealed, confirmed, because it's been raining on that one and it still works great. Does the R5 has a GPS built in? Why this 5D Mark IV has a GPS built in and Wi-Fi? The R5 does not, but here is his answer. No, you can use our extra GPS adapter that you can attach, which you have to buy. It's a separate accessory. Or you can connect Bluetooth wirelessly through your phone and get geotag using the data of your phone. So there is a solution if you want to buy the module, and there's a solution if you have a phone. Perfect. Now for the overheating, there might be some solution, right? People have plenty of experience with the Sony, so we could do something like that. And now you don't need to have any problem with overheating. You can watch part 1 if you didn't right here. Hopefully guys, this information was valuable to you. If you like this kind of video, subscribe for more and see you. This is still, so there's a free solution if you don't want to buy the adapter. And both guys, so Mike and, don't remember the name.